Hello, everyone, and welcome again to our Restorative Justice Summit. Today's topic is From Hard Conversations to Heart Conversations. And my name is Ann Lehman. I am the coordinator for our Restorative Mediation and Facilitation Services here at CCJ. And we are glad that you're here with us today as we listen to stories of hard conversations and conflict. Again, some just technical things. We will be recording today's session for those that can't join today but would like to join later. And we do ask that you keep yourself on mute, and we may need to mute people as well to cut down on people. We are glad to see you. So if you are willing to put your video on, we would love to see your faces. Not a requirement, we would just be glad to see you. So today's conversation on hard conversations to heart conversations. When we think of politics, money, religion, the things that you are never supposed to talk about at family gatherings or in polite company. Talking about certain topics leads to hard conversations. And these disagreements about hard topics like these can lead to heated arguments and even long-lasting conflict. And conflict is hard. It can be physically and emotionally taxing. It can drive a wedge between us and between those that we care about. It can make us uncomfortable, and many times we avoid talking about these difficult topics with those that we know will disagree with. But conflict is a natural part of being human. It's a natural part of being connected to each other and in relationships with each other. And though we can never escape from disagreement, we can choose to have hard conversations in ways that will bring us closer rather than continue to drive us apart. So today, for our summit, I'd like to especially welcome several people who will be speaking today about their own experiences and perspectives on hard conversations of conflict. Mike Yoder, who will be our keynote, is a well-known name in Elkhart County. Welcome, Mike. Mike has had various leadership roles in the community and has served as an Elkhart County Commissioner for many years. We will also be hearing from Diane Herzler, an Elkhart County resident and a music educator, who we recently got to know through some hard conversations and dialogue that we hosted at CCJ. Welcome also to Brenna Williams. Brenna is a recent graduate from Indiana University in South Bend, with her degree in social work. And we were fortunate to have Brenna intern with us here at CCJ, and we look forward to her reflections. After today's summit, in the next few days, you'll be also receiving a booklet of information and reflections about this topic, hard conversations to heart conversations. And I want to also highlight in that booklet the reflections from Chris Tidmarsh, who is a local resident who sought out CCJ's services for conflict in his own life. And he has some great reflections in that booklet that I encourage you to read. We can turn our hard conversations into heart conversations. And this is the work that we do at the Center for Community Justice. We help people address conflict by moving through the hard conversations to the heart conversations. I'd like to turn it over now to our Executive Director at the Center for Community Justice, Erwin Larrier. To you, Erwin.
Okay, thank you very, very much. First thing I want to do is say good afternoon to everyone. It's wonderful to see you all here for this exciting event. Now, welcome to From Hard Conversations to Heart Conversations. Today, we're about to hear from some exciting individuals who are going to share their stories about moving from hard to heart conversation. Everyone needs to have a hard conversation with someone else at some time. Today, we're going to have some insights into what can positively happen when we do it the right way. There may be multiple ways of doing it, but it's the whole process that we really want to talk about. Also, we're going to use today's event as a type of a fundraiser to help us continue doing this work. I believe that you're about to be motivated and inspired to become an action taker. From hard to heart conversations. Back over to you, Anne.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we will get to our speakers without further ado. First, we are going to welcome Mike Yoder. Thank you for being here, Mike. Mike Yoder was born and raised in Elkhart County and is a longtime dairy farmer. In addition to farming, Mike has served in various leadership roles, including serving on the board of directors for Indiana Farm Bureau Incorporated, Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance Companies, and as past president of the Indiana Professional Dairy Producers Association. Mike is a member at Silverwood Mennonite Church in Goshen, and he and his wife Rhonda, a music teacher at Jefferson Elementary School, have 2 daughters, 2 sons-in-law, and 5 grandchildren. Mike is very active in our community. In 2004, Mike was elected to the office of County Commissioner. After serving as County Commissioner for 16 years, in January, he started a new position as Town Manager for the town of Bristol. We look forward to hearing from Mike.
Thank you, Anne. Appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts and some of my experiences on what I've always talked about as improving community dialogue. And it's always an interesting perspective as a speaker when you listen to the session being introduced and then you're wondering, wait a minute, is what I'm just about to share exactly what they wanted me to share? And I think I'll be close maybe, but afterwards I think we have some opportunities for questions, and perhaps then we can focus in on some things that would be of importance to each of you. So this is really a large and complicated topic, obviously. And as I was thinking about where I might focus my comments, I considered the title that the CCJ team has anointed this session, Hard Conversations to Heart Conversations. And I like this title a lot. In fact, I think it's brilliant. But then it occurred to me that I may not know what a heart conversation is. At least defined by the CCJ team. And hard conversation is not hard to define at all, I don't think. So after about 30 seconds of really deep thought, I think I decided that probably a heart conversation is a conversation that matters. In the sense that something or maybe someone changes. And that perhaps a conversation heart conversation is something that increases understanding or awareness of both parties involved. And if that's what it is, I think it sounds pretty cool. Like a very cool experience, in fact. And if I'm on the right path with that definition, I can say that I've experienced some of these very cool and very enjoyable heart conversations. And I also recall that they all started out as hard conversations. But I also know that I've experienced innumerable hard conversations, which to the best of my knowledge, didn't really ever transition into a heart conversation. So as I thought back about all these hard conversations that I've had in my life, I believe that I've come up with maybe 3 points. That's kind of the standard for speech, I think, that I can generally talk about in my allotted time. So my first point, my first observation is something that I seem to be starting with numerous times now since I've passed the age of 50. And that's that we've been here before. That what we're experiencing in our community is not new. This anger, this frustration, the division in our communities, racism, prejudice, these threats to our community have been around for a long time. And in fact, from a historic perspective, I think they appear to be some sort of ever-present part of just being human. So hard conversations, I think, have always been a challenge. And I think that we have always routinely avoided them if we could. Now, there is this sentiment that it may be worse now because of technology, specifically social media. And I think I agree with that, because it's so much easier now to find those people in the community that think and feel exactly the way we feel. So it's easy for people to find other people to have easy discussions, easy conversations with, and therefore it's easier to avoid the hard conversations. And during my last couple terms as county commissioners, I actually experienced this increase in this reality of finding our own niche easier in some of the more controversial policy discussions or decisions that we had to make as county commissioners. So in those instances, in dealing with these controversial decisions, each side, and sometimes there's more than two, but each side that everybody's connecting with each other on social media, or they're just connecting with like-minded friends. And then when they contact the commissioners, they contact me specifically to share their thoughts and where they thought I should make my decision as a commissioner, I noticed that all these different sides had two commonalities. The first one is they were all certain that their opinion was the correct opinion, right? Secondly, they were all convinced that their opinion represented the majority view in the community because they hadn't talked to anybody else that thought of anything different. And if there were, then they must be within the minority. So there's something else I noticed though too in the last decade, maybe a little bit longer, is that there's been this apparent lack of respect in our community. It's as if someone have given members of our community permission to behave, I think, badly. And I suspect that these someone is represented by these humans that fulfill important roles in our communities, both local and nationally. And these roles are leadership roles, which is my second observation I'd like to share this afternoon, is the importance of community leaders in demonstrating, modeling, and guiding us through these hard conversations. And to illustrate this importance of leadership, I have a story of contrast that I want to share with you. It not only illustrates the importance, I think, of community leadership, but also speaks a bit to my first point that, we've been here before. So perhaps some of you are probably old enough to remember this circumstance. You may not, however, know some of the details of what went on behind the scenes. So I'm going back to April 4 in 1968, and it was perhaps late afternoon or early evening. A United States senator from New York arrived in Indianapolis for a presidential campaign event. A large crowd had gathered for this event, and the crowd was aware that earlier in the day, Martin Luther King had been shot. Now, the media had shared that Mr. King was expected to recover. And that's what everyone at the event knew at the particular time that they were gathered. Remember, this was before the internet, this was before smartphones, this was before instant media news feeds. So as the senator's plane landed in Indianapolis, he was informed that Mr. King had died. And so Senator Robert F. Kennedy was greeted at the airport that afternoon by Richard Lugar, who at that time was mayor of Indianapolis. And the Mayor Lugar, encouraged the senator to cancel the event because you see widespread violence was expected not only in the city of Indianapolis, but across many of the major cities in the United States. Well, instead of canceling, Senator Kennedy went ahead with the event, and he stood before that crowd to have a hard conversation. And of course, the canned campaign speech was abandoned, and instead, the senator spoke from his heart. And he shared that terrible news with the crowd, a totally unscripted speech. And here's an excerpt from those unscripted remarks, these ad-lib remarks, just a brief excerpt from those remarks. For those of you who are Black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and distrust at the injustice of such an act against all white people, I can only say that I feel in my heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand to go beyond these rather difficult times. Well, widespread violence was indeed experienced across the United States that evening, but not in Indianapolis. You see, a leader transitioned that hard conversation to a heart conversation by using a personal story and encouraged a higher standard of how to react. And it made a difference. And the contrast to that story, well, I think it's the obvious one. It's a speech by a different political leader on January 6th of 2021, a speech that was not a hard conversation or a hard conversation. It was an easy conversation. It was one that affirmed anger and divisive behavior. Well, I began learning about hard conversations in the world of politics, as a matter of fact, and I suppose that based upon the shenanigans that we're all witnessing in the current political leadership, it may be a little hard to imagine that there's much of anything worthwhile to learn in the political arena. But my experience actually proved to be very valuable for me. So it was in the mid-70s, and as a new and young farmer, I joined the Farm Bureau. Now, if you don't know much about the organization, the Farm Bureau is a large and powerful farm, and agriculture policy lobbying organization. And for 30 years, beginning with the Young Farmer Committee and then concluding as a member of the Indiana State Board of Directors, I interacted frequently with United States senators and their staff, United States congressmen and their staff, members of the Indiana legislature. I was working with elected officials and staff from both parties during these very formative years in my life. And these legislators became my role models and were actually some of my generation's most highly respected elected leaders, including that former mayor of Indianapolis, US Senator Richard Lugar. So whether it was lobbying on behalf of farmers for certain policies or sitting on state committees arguing for rational and common sense regulations, I experienced many hard conversations. And what I learned from these experienced leaders were the key skills that I found were required in these hard conversations. It was how to be present in the discussion, how to listen, how to ask clarifying questions, and how to compromise. I learned how to disagree respectfully, and I learned how to come to a resolution or a solution, because that was the job that we were tasked with doing. I learned by doing it, and I learned by making a lot of mistakes, requiring probably more apologies than I can remember or even care to count. So it was in those 30 years, I also learned that politics is not necessarily for everyone. It can be personally very difficult and even abusive in any number of ways. Yet I still chose to move from that farm policy lobbying position to serving in an elected position when I ran for county commissioner in 2004. And my goals as I began serving in that elected position included that I would not avoid the hard conversations, that I would take what I learned in those 30 years. And I had a desire to model respectful and transparent dialogue and engagement within our community from that leadership role. And I think I maybe even occasionally was successful, but I have to tell you that the road that I traveled on those 16 years was filled with a lot of potholes. And at times, I think my success rate was perhaps could be graded perhaps as maybe mixed at best. One of the hard conversations that I experienced during my 16 years as county commissioner involved the potential of an ICE detention center in Elkhart County. And there's a lot of stories within that story that I could share that were good, hard conversations, good community dialogue, and some where I personally failed spectacularly, I think. But to stay within my time limit, what I'd rather do is share with you in conclusion something that grew out of the core civic community discussion. So during that time, there was about 60 some days of community dialogue. And what I began to do, or what I did at that particular time, is I utilized a web-based tool to facilitate community discussion. It was called PlaySpeak. And sometime later that fall in 2018, PlaySpeak asked me to attend a national conference in Denver to talk about, in a breakout session, what we experienced during this discussion and how we utilized PlaySpeak. Attending this conference were people from around the country that had a very strong interest in fostering hard conversations, and it included a number of professional dialogue facilitators. And one of the things I came away from that conference with was this heightened awareness of the importance of continuing to not only just talk about how to do the hard conversations in our community, or how to do or conduct respective dialogue, but also the importance of providing opportunities for people to actually experience how to do it. Think about those 30 years of experience that I had. So we needed these opportunities for people to make mistakes and to learn from those. And so since that event in 2018, I've met with a variety of people to talk about how we might accomplish this in our community. And some of the things I've learned is that sustaining this type of opportunity to community, where people have a continuing opportunity to learn how to have hard conversations, that sustaining that is difficult. And if you want to scale it to a point where it might have a community-wide impact, well, at least at this particular point, it seems like it's almost an impossible task. Nonetheless, after 3 years, since 2018, after 3 years of wandering in the wilderness, having a lot of important conversations and significant conversations with people in the community and outside our community about this concept, I connected again with the CCJT. And it's actually the place I should have started with 3 years ago, because I know what this organization does and I know how important they are to our community. So, however, with the CCJ team, we have actually developed a pilot project that's going to test the ability of us putting together this opportunity for members of the community to experience and learn about hard conversations. And we're going to see if we can make that sustainable. And we're going to attempt to pilot a structure that may even be scalable. Now, I got to tell you that I am like an iconic eternal optimist. But yeah, I think our success on this is probably not all that great. But I'm not really afraid of failing, and because I've been at that place many times, and that's exactly my third and final point this afternoon, is that I think it's important for leaders in our community to take some sort of action. It's important to do something. The easy conversation is the one that we have that laments the current status. The hard conversation is the one that creates a plan to attempt to make a difference, to change that status. And if there's anything I've learned over my 40-some years of engaging in hard conversations, is that this skill needs to be an experiential learning activity. And I think if history reveals anything to us, it's something that needs to be continually taught. And so thank you, Ann. That's my conversations. I may have even stayed within my time limit.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. And yes, you're within your time limit, but thank you. Thank you for those reflections. We appreciate your years of experience at engaging this topic. I'm going to turn it over. There will be a chance for questions for Mike later. Many of you may have questions that you want to ask. We're going to get to that later on within the program. First, I want to turn it back over to Erwin.
So Mike, thank you very much for the articulation of a very difficult topic, a difficult subject matter, difficult, literally talking about something that really scares us. But I'm the eternal optimist, as you say you are. I'm more eternal than you, even though you may look more eternal than I am, with wisdom. I'm excited by what is before us because we stand at the juncture in history where we make history or have history made. Something is going to happen to us, or we're going to make something happen. And CCJ been around for more than 40 years, as you know, and we are at that point. We are moving towards a tipping point of positivity, and we want to be able to turn that around. Now, we are taking this opportunity to let you know that we need to do this work. And we are, this is a part of a fundraiser where we are asking individuals to, to let us know, to support us, because we need champions, we need all kinds of people. And in order to do this work, we need you, we need your resources, we need your networks, all of those types of things. So Emma, let me spotlight Emma. Where's Emma? Okay, let me do this. I always get this a little messed up because, where's Emma? Emma, you've disappeared. No, you haven't. There you are, right there. And I want to spotlight Emma. And Emma, you want to say something, or you put something up for us, I believe. So we have part of our fundraiser, and you can see in the, I believe is the top right hand of your screens, we have already had $100 in donations that was provided by one person. In the top right hand of the screen, Emma is doing that thing very nicely. And if you so want to support this work, you can use a very simple thing, text, take your cell phone out anytime during this meeting, and at the bottom you'll see text the words "Heart to Heart" to the number 707070 to donate. We thank you, and we'll come back to this again, and I'm going to hand back over to Anne right now. Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you, Anne.
Yes, we appreciate your donations. We can't do this work without funding. Whoops.
So
we can't do this work without your funding, so we do appreciate your donations. We are going to hear next from Brenna Williams. Brenna, we're so glad that you're here today, and we are so grateful to have had Brenna with us this past spring as an intern in her work with Indiana University in the social work program. Brenna has a special interest in working with children and families, being the middle of 6 siblings. And when she worked here with an internship at CCJ, she worked with our victim offender reconciliation program, where she did get to work with some youth and families. And also she participated in and helped facilitate a book study that CCJ offered to the community, where we practiced having hard conversations. So Brenna, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Brenna, and so I just graduated from IUSB with my bachelor's degree, and I was with CCJ from January until about mid-May. So for me, social work has been really impactful. It's really changed my life and honestly my perspective and several viewpoints that I've had. I feel like it's definitely helped me to gain a better understanding of myself, as well as how I can better help people that I come in contact with, both in my profession and just in my life in general. one thing I love most about social work is that I feel like it's teaching me to be a better provider to people, again, both in my degree and just as a person. I feel like they teach you so many qualities to think twice, to critically analyze situations, and to really I guess, embrace and be conscious of the relationships that are around you. So that's just something that I've grown more and more passionate about as I've gone through school. And so CCJ was my second internship. I was really excited to be with them. And for me, it was kind of a shift going more from like in homeworks, like in shelters and such, to be kind of in like a legal sense. So that was really exciting and also kind of a shift for me. Being there, I got to also participate in court hearings that took place on Tuesdays. These involve small claim situations and such like that, and as well as, like Anne said, the VORP and the book club program. And I feel like this was really, really important for me because I was able to kind of see both sides of things. Being an intern, I got to see kind of behind the curtains of how the employees work to set things up and how, we also communicated within the office and the workplace to make sure we were all in cahoots and we all knew where we were on things, and also having hard conversations within employees too. So we weren't just kind of preaching that to others, but also had an understanding in our own kind of interactions as well. So that was just some stuff that I really enjoyed doing. And then for the book club for me, I was able to, again, be with the employees for part of it to do the planning. But then I was also able to, as myself, participate as a community member and to speak in those difficult conversations and to, I guess, have my own voice, which I think impacted me a lot more than what I thought it would. Being in the sense of, you're in your internship and school, you really focus on the academic aspect and making sure you do well because you want to. But I really immersed myself in the experience and gave a lot of reflection, and I shared a lot, as well as took in reflections and comments from other members. And I just felt like that experience overall for me was extremely positive and beneficial. In social work, one of our main core ethics that we're taught is social justice, and we advocate and we fight for that for other people. But one thing that CCJ has taught me is that it's just as important to do that for yourself, and to be able to advocate and also fight. But what I love about CCJ is having those hard restorative conversations don't have to be so defensive and so tense. It's really to give you that space to feel safe and to feel comfortable knowing that your feelings are valid and that they should be respected by all parties. And so that's something that I really grew to understand and appreciate over the time of the book club, was understanding that I'm not just an intern, I'm also a member of this club, and my thoughts and my reflections and my emotions throughout the time were validated and really taken in by the group. And so by the end of the session, I felt close and connected to everyone, though I didn't know them for that long. And it was a really powerful experience for me overall. And so that was something that kind of took place over a period of time. And what was also really interesting for me was in our VORP program, where we have a one-time session, and that's kind of like a mediation, which is where we have the restorative conversation. For me, my favorite one involved a youth who had stolen a car from an individual, and she ended up being a mother. And just before the meetings, like the pre-meetings and, meeting with both parties, it was really interesting to see perspectives and viewpoints versus concluding that mediation session. Because of course, when you think of a crime or something taking place, we're really focusing on that crime and a loss that has taken place. And what I really loved about the focus for the restorative conversation and mediation is focusing on the relationship and how the relationship was affected and how a person was affected, so that you can then restore that and move forward. Whether or not it was, keeping communication afterwards or just feeling a sense of relief and closure from a situation, that was just, for me, really awesome. And so it was really interesting to hear the woman express, the hardship that was caused on her because of this interaction, and also her just saying how it made her feel individually versus just focusing on that. And what was even more fantastic for me was seeing that youth take in those words and and then produce a genuine apology. And beyond that, it was a sense of wanting to help and wanting to do more. And I feel like that also came out of the sense of it wasn't just a young person talking or a child talking who made a mistake. I felt like he was treated with respect as well, in the sense to be talked to like an adult, but also in a sense of a respectful and safe atmosphere, where I felt like it was important for him to take that initiative on his own term and not feel like it was forced upon or expected of you. So that for me is one of the biggest things. It's those unforced and just natural interactions that take place. It was just always so positive for me. And understanding that it's not always going to be like that, and it's not something that happens overnight, but seeing the progress and the positives for me makes the hard conversations to heart conversations a big sense of hope. And as a young person, I feel like that's really important to have nowadays. That's it.
Thank you so much for your reflections, Brenna. Thank you, Brenna. We appreciate your reflections, knowing that you experienced what it was like working from CCJ, and also from your experience as a participant as well. So thank you very much for those reflections. I'll turn it back over to Erwin now.
Okay, great. Back over to Emma. Emma, if you could show that again. I just want to, again, top right-hand corner, and you can text to the bottom here. I never get tired or excited about hearing and seeing the transformations of individuals. I wish I'd had this when I was growing up, because it would have made all the difference to the quality of my life. Here at CCJ, we listen to many stories, and unfortunately, sometimes those stories are unfinished. Now, hard conversations to heart conversations is not a magic bullet. There is no silver bullet. There's nothing two portions of this and one portion of that is going to be great and everything is going to be fine. This is a process, and it takes time. So your continued support for what we do is incredibly necessary. I want to say thank you, because I continue to be excited by the opportunities that these processes, all based in restorative justice practices, theories, and philosophies, it has made and continues to make a transformative thing in my life. And I'm excited about giving it away to others. So I want to pass back over to Anne right now. Anne, over to you.
Thank you. It's really easy to donate through this method. So we encourage you to just text 707070 and text heart to heart to donate to help CCJ continue to do this work. We are grateful next to have Diane Herzler with us. And Diane is a step/adoptive/birth mom. She's a grandmother, a mother-in-law. She's a music educator. She's many things. She appreciates her rural roots and values her ancestry. Diane says that growing up in an Anabaptist Peace Church tradition, she embraced the importance of justice, the importance of community, and reconciliation. In conversations about controversial issues, it is important to Diane to respect other people's opinions and also her own. Diane participated recently in a community book study exploring issues of racism within the field of restorative justice. And Diane, we look forward to your reflections.
Thank you, Anne. Thanks for the privilege of participating in the summit. And anybody that knows me would wonder why I was listed as one of the speakers, and I wonder that too. But I'm sure it has to do with the fact that I participated in the CCJ book study this past winter, in which our weekly meetings were structured in a circles format, which ensured that everyone got a chance to share their thoughts Everyone listened to each other respectfully. Nobody interrupted with suggestions, but just digested each person's input. It was such a calming setting for grappling with ideas that were hard to come to terms with, like Brenna said, or situations that didn't seem to have answers, and there are plenty of those around, as we all know. After the first week or two, I eagerly looked forward to the next meeting. I mean, really eagerly. I really didn't want it to end after 6 or 7 weeks had passed. And I had to think over and over. It just had so much to do with that level of respect and honoring each person, and giving everybody equal time, and nobody felt threatened, and there wasn't arguing or anything. So it's with great appreciation for Community Center for Justice and the leaders of that group, which were Alicia and Emma, and also for each of the members of that group, that I'm excited to see more of what CCJ has to offer to people like me, who I'm not trained in this social work stuff or conflict resolution or anything. Never had a formal connection with CCJ, but I just picked up on that book discussion, and I will be noticing other things in the future. Many of us, I know, just have an ongoing interest in learning how to be good citizens of this precious, polarized world that is sort of temporarily ours, and we're kind of handed it on all the time to the next generation, and we received it from those before us. And I think collectively civilization keeps maturing, but I still think we don't learn from history, but that's another topic. So if this conference is about turning hard conversations into heart conversations, I would think, like Mike, that we're looking at the word heart pretty carefully. And my take on that sort of was heart to heart, which leads me to soul. And when I'm having soul conversations and heart conversations, I'm thinking that I am really sharing intimately, maybe with some fear about, do I really want this person to know that about me? But I'm also must be sensing that they are opening their heart that much to me as well. And it's true that words like heart and love have become almost generic, and the symbols that we put in all of our little emoji stuff and all that, we can just kind of brush that off as everyday, but it is what it's about. And we need to somehow keep, I think, always looking at the reality of love as real, not just this little fluffy thing that we throw around. Love, for most people who value God or a higher power or source of good or love or light, whatever we call it, we often understand that way out there power because we've experienced it. That somehow brings love into the air. And we talk about having an energy that connects us. We talk about having that power of the source of love and light within us, and that we are maybe created of it, depending on what our religious tradition or our spiritual thinking or our scientific reasoning, whatever, this reality about this energy that really connects us as people and as living things, and to nature, etc. So this is stuff that we can't just brush off in this kind of a situation that we're in with our polarized society. And I just feel like, wow, this is all the more reason for us to explore all of that. And there are so many people doing that. And I think all of us here are trying to think through some of that. I think of a quote by Richard Rohr. He's a Catholic father writer. I don't know exactly how to describe him, except that his writings are very inspirational to me. And one time this little line popped up: it's more important to be in relationship than to be right. It's not about being right when we are seeking to be connected with this powerful love energy and so forth. It's about being connected and in relationship. So if I'm not going to think that it's about being right, then pretty soon I can't give any of my arguments, and that kind of falls flat. So then I start thinking, well, what is it about? And so I just have been trying to think in this, really in the last months and years recently. I've thought so much about what does it take to guide us as individuals who have reasons to think differently, and we should think differently. It's not about trying to bring the whole world to agreement to think exactly alike. Not at all. But how do we give each other that space that Brenna mentioned to, talk about this stuff and respect where we're coming from? I call it being true to myself, which I have to be. I have to listen to my inner voices. But that means I have to value other people's inner voices and how they are being true to themselves. And yet we can all tweak it, and we better tweak a lot of that as we learn that there are bigger issues behind something that we didn't realize had to do with our conflict or our dilemma or controversy, whatever. So I feel like it's important for us to think about the willingness to take the high road. And to take that high road, it's the phrase, the quote that I remember the most that my late husband told me one time when I was ranting and raving about some, I don't know what, some controversy or some conflict with people, evidently. He said, "You've got to rise above the fray, Diane." And all the time I think about that. Where am I rising to if I'm rising above the fray? And what am I letting go? What am I letting down there when I rise above the fray? And I like to just think that's the high road, so to speak. If we take the high road, we have to let some of the petty stuff go. Sort of like parents, you want your kids to do such and such, learn how to do such and such, and they make a huge mess, but they finally learn to do it. But you're the one that's always going to have to clean up after them, and you're the one that is also going to have to deal with whatever came out of all of that learning, and you just gracefully, sometimes, mostly gracefully, accept the fact that, well, you've got to be the adult. So how do we be that adult for ourselves? And how do we get to the more adult road and let our little stuff and our mess lay down there and not be so much a cause of fuss, I guess is all I can say. So anyway, we want to take the high road. Rumi talks about it as a place where we sort of are in a different dimension from where we list what's right and what's wrong. And to me, that means that's a different dimension, a higher dimension than saying who's in and who's out. All of that is what I think of the higher road. So I'm just thinking that's something that I feel like we have to really look at more and more. Also, and that doesn't mean being silent. When we should speak up, we need to find our voice. But maybe we don't have to say every little bit, just the part that counts. I don't know. That's a silly thing for me to say because I talk all the time, so sorry about that. Okay, another thing I think we need to think hard about is the willingness to be vulnerable. And I love some of what Brene Brown writes, if you've ever read some of her stuff. She talks so much about that willingness to be vulnerable. We just have to. That's the only way that we can walk together and get anywhere and still agree to disagree. We have to be kind. We have to be willing to be kind. How elementary is that? But it absolutely works. And I'm pretty sure that, well, I think of the golden rule in my Christian tradition: be ye kind one to another. Be kind to people as you would want them to be kind to you. But I think there are other world religions that have that same proverb or quote or whatever, or idea or concept that isn't just a Christian concept. And you don't even have to be a person of faith to have that concept be a guide in your life. So besides the high road and the vulnerability and the kindness, we've got to be willing to forgive. And forgiveness is just such a huge topic. I don't know what to do with it, except that I know it's got to be in there. And it goes along with being vulnerable. It also goes along with our need to be willing to try the hard stuff and risk failing. And so we end up having to forgive ourselves, forgive each other, forgive our ancestors, forgive the people we don't even know out there that are doing whatever. But we need to free ourselves from our angers and our blaming and our assumptions that keep us in the polarization or right, wrong, or we, they, or in, out, whatever. So those are just some things that I think we need to think about. When we talk about love, we got to talk about all of that. When we talk about heart conversations or soul relationships, and again, it's not necessarily about agreeing, but it's getting to some place where we can disagree but continue to learn from each other, of course, and so forth. So yeah, I've been having these hard conversations for the last couple of years with people that I love so much, my family, my friends, immigration, Dreamer, DACA, LGBTQ inclusion, Black Lives Matter, everything, and even COVID. I literally pulled out of playing for a wedding that participating as a musician for this lovely favorite type young woman that I know that asked me to participate in the music for her wedding, and of course I would. I was so excited about it and all. And for those of you that maybe don't know, sometimes it involves several instruments, several players. You all have to learn your own music, then you have to get together, and then you have to figure out how you're going to do it in this particular setting. And so it takes a lot of coordination and networking. And then when I realized that, and this was early in the pandemic, maybe I could have figured out how to do it. But I didn't feel safe and I didn't feel comfortable from what I understood was going to be the level of of procedure. And I just agonized over making this an issue for her to have to deal with, and the other musicians. So I was letting a whole bunch of people down, and her family that I just love, always have, always will. But I pulled out of it because I just told her in the end, all I could do was come back to, I have to be true to myself, and I want to give her space to be true to herself. And so that seemed to be that she needed to do her wedding that I hated to miss. And I hated to mess up for her, but I did. So all of those hard conversations, and someone, I think Erwin referred to, how do we do them the right way? And I'm thinking, boy, I keep having them, but I don't know how you do them the right way. So anyway, one time Brenna did it the right way for me in our book group. And I just want to quickly tell about that. I was bemoaning, I think I had just learned something about my white fragility, or something that was kind of a new concept to me that is making me feel terrible. And I was going on, I feel sick. I just feel absolutely sick about this, something related to that. I don't remember the details, but I did feel sick. And I kept bemoaning about this. And I was realizing I'm such a person of white privilege, and looking back, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? So beating myself. So somehow in there, Brenna stepped in with some kind of comment, and probably it would have been when she began her sharing. And she started in, I think I just finally quit and just kind of sank into my chair in misery. And Brenna, this young person who hasn't experienced life nearly as long as I have, but who has experienced it as a Black person and has experienced that kind of racial injustice in ways that I can't even conceive of. She started saying something at the beginning of her sharing, kind of an aside to me, something about, well, I don't think you have to be so hard on yourself, Diane. I don't think you have to look at that quite so negatively. And I don't remember her words at all. What I remembered was that she was comforting me. And she was encouraging me. And she was on a higher plane. And she could have been saying, well, it's about time, Diane. When are we ever going to learn that stuff about you? And that's fine. You should say that to me, Brenna. And there are times and places for that. And I need to learn that. And I thank you to tell me that. But in that moment, she let all that go. And she went to the high road and comforted me and said, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. And suddenly, that hard conversation had become a heart conversation. Thank you, Brenna.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you for your reflections and for sharing and being in that vulnerable space as you were just talking about. You're doing that now, so thank you. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Brenna. Thank you, Mike. We would like to open the floor now to questions from anyone in the audience. Well, how we're going to do that is to ask you to put your questions into the chat. And so if you can go down to the bottom of your screen and see the chat button, and you can choose to send those, please send those questions to me. And I will read them as they come in, and we will address them to our speakers and ask them to respond. You can ask a question to all three, and we'll allow all three of them to speak, or you can ask a question that's for one of them or about a particular part of their story. So feel free to put them into the chat and we'll give some time for that. We can also spend some time talking a little bit about the Center for Community Justice and what we do with our programs. The CCJ does a variety of things within the context of restorative justice. We work with individuals on an interpersonal level with conflict through mediation and other conflict resolution services. We also work with individuals through conflict coaching, which is a one-on-one process where we coach people through a specific conflict in their own lives. We take referrals from anyone, and so individuals can make referrals for themselves from the community for individual conflict resolution or mediation work. We also organize processes for organizations that want to discuss hard stuff. So we work with groups from nonprofits or businesses that want to work on building trust, understanding each other's styles in conflict, and helping create positive work styles, work cultures. We also organize community circles and dialogues periodically to help people come together and have these kinds of hard conversations that we have been talking about. Those are some of the things that CCJ can do. So one person in the chat asked about our organization and our programs. And so we do rely on funding from the community as well as some grants and other income, but donations from the community are very important. So again, remember to text to the pledge to name your support for CCJ so we can continue to do this work. It's a variety of sources that we rely on. So we do value donations from the community. Someone in the chat said, thank you very much to all the speakers for their contributions. Here's a question for all three of you, Brenna, Diane, and Mike. How do we reconcile the need for having a voice and the importance of listening and understanding the other person's point of view? So reconciling your own voice as well as the other's point of view. I'll throw that out to whichever of the three would like to tackle that question first.
For me, just a real quick answer. I would just say allowing time and a feasible amount of time to really give both parties that chance to be heard and to share as well. So, you know, like I really like what Diane said, understanding not so much speaking about who's right, but really taking that time to understand and articulate from both perspectives to have a better understanding overall.
That's I agree with that 100%, and I'll share a story that happened to me. It's sort of funny. I shared that one of my goals as county commissioner was to be open, willing to listen to all sides. And actually, when I would make a decision in public, I would make every effort to explain that decision, why I came to that conclusion. And it became a habit of the county commissioners as a whole, all three of us, during a controversial decision to share why we did this. So it is important to listen to all of those voices. And it's also important for people to understand that sometimes people think that their voice is more important than others. And I think it's important for leaders to help them understand that everybody's voice is equal and just as important, their perspective. So so after a couple times of meeting with a variety of different groups on, it was usually zoning matters. And so I'd meet with a community and we'd meet in a living room somewhere, and I'd listen respectfully, and I'd ask questions to clarify where their position was at. And I'd make it very clear because they all want to know, what was my decision going to be? And I said, well, we're going to make that decision on Monday morning with the other two commissioners, and we'll hear all sides again in a public hearing. And then we'll make a decision and we'll explain why we did that. And so I would meet with various groups on both sides of the issue. And I thought I was doing a really good job of just listening. And I thought that this is a bit naive on my part, I suppose, but after we made the decision, I explained why. And I thought, well, everybody would be really happy with the fact that I explained why, but they would be respectful of my decision. Not the case. And in fact, I learned that I developed a reputation of being someone that you could not trust. And that's because everybody assumed, as I sat there and listened to their perspective and didn't react, but just listened to their perspective and tried to learn more about their perspective, they assumed that I was going to vote in their favor, that they were right. And so I don't, that just goes to the point of how hard these conversations, how hard conversations can be, and how hard it can be for leaders to actually, even if you try to model the right practices, it's still, I don't know, it's just difficult sometimes, I guess. It's hard.
Well, I don't have anything to add to that, but Richard Rohr does. I just want to read a little something here that I just have to think about this so much. He says, everything created is mortal and limited, and if you look long enough, paradoxical. By paradox, I mean something that initially looks contradictory or impossible, but in a different frame or at a different level is in fact deeply true. He says, I am talking about just holding the tension, not necessarily finding a resolution or closing or closure to paradox. We must agree to live without resolution, at least for a while. He says this is very difficult for most people, largely because we have not been taught how to do this mentally or emotionally, and we didn't even know we could or that we should. He says we need to loosen our egoic attachment to certainty and retrain our minds to understand the wisdom of paradox, holding all of that tension. And I'm all for conflict resolution, don't get me wrong, but that level of thinking together, we're just going to hold this a little bit. That amazes me. It fascinates me.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Brenna. This isn't a question, but we got a comment in the chat that every speaker today, this person wrote that every speaker has moved me tonight, and I have felt encouragement to keep my heart open after listening to each person. So that is very encouraging. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. If you'd like to experience some of what we've been talking about in terms of practicing having hard conversations, please do sign up for our next immersion experience. We are going to host an afternoon of learning and practicing skills of hard conversations on Thursday, August 12th. We will have the registration information on our website, which is centerforcommunityjustice.org. And I think maybe Erwin can put it in the chat as well. Actually, I don't know if you can. If Erwin can put that link to register for that in the chat, that would be great.
Sorry, I'm doing that now. I just pasted something I shouldn't have. But
okay, and I'm going to turn it back over to you, Erwin. Thank you again, everyone.
Wow. So thank you. We're mindful of your time, so we're going to stick to your time. But I want to share this. We as a group stand uniquely positioned to do something to bring our community together. You've come, you've listened, you've questioned, and you've learned. Now you want to know what to do. Now, there's at least 3 ways you can engage in this process. Number 1 is that you can partner with us to continue providing pathways to healing in our community by making a one-time donation of any amount, or you can sign up to provide a donation of at least $25 a month. Our the need for resources doesn't end after you've done a conference or you've started working with 5 or 10 people. You can sign up, number 2, you can sign up to participate in our heart-to-heart conversations immersion experience, where you'll begin to participate in a difficult conversation that moves towards a heart conversation. It is experiential education. This dipping your toe in the water, so to speak, costs a nominal amount. We are charging $50 and it's 4 hours long. We are dropping the link in the chat box to those who want to take this thing to the next level. We can only work with a maximum of 20 persons. You can share this with everybody if you desire. Or number 3, you can be a champion. Tell everyone you know about your positive experience today and encourage them to partner with us. Again, the fundraiser will be open until Friday, which is the July 2nd. And all we need for you to do is to text HARD to HEART to 707070. And I'm handing back over to you for the final comments.
Well, it's hard to give rounds of applause over Zoom, but a virtual round of applause. We can go like this to Mike, to Diane, and to Brenna. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to all of you participants for joining us as well. We look forward to the next time when we get to engage with you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.